Welcome to Lamora's Cards and Horrors, the best store for all your gaming and haunting needs. Today we're here for the first episode of my new series where we're actually talking about cards and horrors for the first time. Creatures in Graveyards, where I'm going to be bringing on guests who are either community members or content creators. They're going to be coming on and talking about their favorite decks and their favorite horror movies. Today I have Natalie with me. Would you like to introduce yourself, Natalie?
Hi, I'm Natalie, Nat, whatever you want to call me. I am a Giraffanat on Twitter, Twitch, all the things. I play EDH. I also love unboxing things, all the cards, just give them to me.
Oh yeah.
And I love horror movies, so this was a great combination.
Perfect combo. I was surprised at how perfect of a combo it seemed. It started as a random tweet, and I knew there was overlap, but I didn't know there was so much very passionate overlap of people who wanted to do it. First, we're going to be talking about the movie that you chose. Which movie is that?
So the movie I chose is The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which isn't a super mainstream movie, but I think it's a great movie. It didn't receive great reviews when it first came out, but I think over time it's kind of evolved into a pretty awesome horror movie.
I think it did pretty well financially. It wasn't like a bomb or anything. But yeah, it definitely like I don't want to think about it, but we're like 16 years, 17 years out from when it came out.
Yeah.
But I think the movie gets overlooked in that I think it started the really common trend in the late 2000s, early 2010s of like based on a true story supernatural movies where every week we're getting like The Exorcism of Air Bud and based on a true story like all the time or The Haunting of Bel Air or whatever. To my knowledge, at least, this movie really jump started that.
Yeah, I think it definitely did. So the movie is based on a true story. The story is about Annalise Nickel. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. That's the true story. But of course, the movie changes it to Emily Rose. It's all based on true events, which I don't know people's like beliefs and things, but paranormal stuff always gets me because I totally believe in it. So
okay, so that adds a lot to it.
Yeah.
So this is a really unique movie in that in a lot of ways it isn't a horror movie and it's more of a courtroom drama where most of the film takes place after the death of Emily Rose, and the story isn't really centered around Emily.
Yeah, so the movie actually starts, well, you see kind of like everybody mourning over the death, and then it kind of shifts into this court case where they sue the reverend who performed the exorcism on Emily for negligent homicide. So basically the entire movie is flashbacks and recounts of people's stories of what happened. So you're not actually seeing the movie as, from Emily's point of view. It's from the point of view of people that were there or people that heard things that had happened. So
yeah, it gives everything, it kind of does the job where we get the supernatural elements pretty early on in the movie, but we don't have that like light switch moment where the main characters realize supernatural events are occurring until after, because it's all sort of distanced. The lawyers that we follow for a lot of the movie, none of them are really believing these actual events.
Right.
And until things start to sort of happen in the present, that makes it real.
Right. Yeah. So the opening scene of the movie is so spooky. I rewatched it this week to kind of refresh myself. And the opening scene itself just kind of sets it as a horror film, even though, like you said, it's kind of a courtroom drama and horror film in one, which is really why I like this movie, because I've always been into courtroom cases. I love watching trials. Like I've been watching the big trial happening right now.
Yeah, of course.
So first of all, I just love trials, and then it also having that horror element is just what makes it a great movie for me personally. The defense which is the city. It's not even the family that, the family's kind of on the side of the Reverends.
Mhm.
If you look at it in the movie, the family of Emily Rose is kind of on the Reverend side,
Mhm.
because they're all religious people. They believe in what the Reverend was doing, and so it's really interesting that the city is the one defending the case, and for defense of Emily, as they say. They have to establish ways to explain how events happens.
Yeah.
They have to find ways to make the paranormal activity seem like it has a real life solution.
Mhm.
So there's kind of like this, is it real? Is it not real? But then, like you said, the attorney for the Reverend starts experiencing things in her real life,
Yeah.
which makes it seem like it is more of a paranormal situation.
Mm. And you also have sort of a tension where the family of Emily is on the Reverend side, but the church actually wants him to plead guilty.
Right. Because they don't want to be associated with. It really seems like they don't want to be associated with any negative press. And like they tried so hard to make sure that the Reverend doesn't come on the stand.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to make it look like he's crazy and that he's representing them as a crazy person. So, even though, like, religiously, like, a lot of churches and believe in exorcism as like a normal thing.
So what is sort of your history with the movie?
Oh my gosh, I think I picked it up. I picked up the DVD of it back in the day. When people watch DVDs.
Yep.
I think I picked it up from like Walmart or something, and I was like, this looks interesting. I like horror movies. Let me just grab this. And I loved it. It's one of those movies that like I can watch over and over again.
I know for some people there won't be quite enough horror if you're going in for like pure horror and that's all you want. But I think it does a really good job contrasting the sort of mundane courtroom ongoings with like really effective horror scenes where there's like, it's not a very graphic movie for the most part. But especially you get these sort of like late night scenes that happen a lot with both Emily and with the attorney that are just insanely creepy. They're really well done.
Yeah. So Jennifer Carpenter, who plays Emily Rose, she basically did most of the contortions that you see, like herself. When you see the exorcism and you see the contortions, you're like, okay, that looks so unreal. Yeah. Whereas like the reason that this movie freaks me out so much, I think, is because it looks so real. The scratching on the walls like will send shivers like down your spine as it's happening, because it, like it looks and sounds so real. It's like one of those things where it's like, yes, it's not like the most in your face like scary movie, but like it has these moments that are just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. I think one thing it adds is making the viewer kind of question things, because as the defense continues to come up with logical explanations and we don't see like overtly superstitious things going on all the time in the movie, only in flashbacks up until a decent bit into the movie, it sort of adds courtroom drama of the not knowing what happened and into horror. Right.
Yeah. So you're kind of like, okay, I can kind of see this explanation, but then like you see something else that's part of the scene and you're like, okay, that doesn't add up.
Yeah.
I think it's a really nice balance of doing that. And the exorcism scene itself is a lot.
It's something that's done a lot historically in films, but I feel like this movie does a pretty good job of doing something that we've seen 100 times and actually still making it really good.
Yeah, like it feels like it's a real thing happening. Like that's why I picked this one over the rest of them, because it just seems more realistic to me.
And I think the framing works with that, where if you're still on the fence about what's happening is real or not, whether the possession itself is real, than the really sort of brutal and grounded processes going on for this. It just seems that much darker.
It does. It does.
So is there anything else you want to touch on with this movie?
I'm not going to spoil how it ends because
Okay.
I think everyone should watch it.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the Reverend is trying to prove that Emily was essentially a good person and that she just happened to have been possessed. So that's kind of the core of it. And that's kind of what the case centers around, is that he was really just trying to help her ultimately. But it's a great way that the movie did that, because then we got all these flashbacks, so you're not just getting horror completely thrown in your face.
Yeah, I think it's a good movie for anyone who likes supernatural things, but is maybe like a little fatigued on, like if you look up for possession or supernatural movies, there's a massive list of pretty similar films, and this is a good place to go when you want something that's a little different.
Yeah, this one makes you think a little bit more, I think.
You want to go on to the deck that you brought on today?
Sure.
Which is also horrors.
It's also horrors. I'm on brand. So the deck I brought on today is my EDH deck, Umbris. It is probably one of my favorite decks, but also people's least favorite decks to play against.
Yes. So Umbris is since it was revealed, sort of a controversial commander, mostly in the more casual space.
Yes. Which I do tend to play in the more casual space.
Mm-hmm.
I came across Umbris because I was just opening Crimson Vow, a box of Crimson Vow, and I pulled him out and I pulled Toxtrol out, and I was like, I don't care about Toxtrol. I want to build this one.
Yeah.
I was like, horrors and nightmares? That sounds so much fun. Having this giant thing on my battlefield sounds so much fun. Commanders don't speak to me often, but that one spoke to me.
What my issue can be with a lot of tribal strategies, they aren't necessarily the most flavorful thing, even though it's like, all my cards are goblins, but it's like their identity is sort of, they get bigger the more I have, or, like with elves, they get bigger, I can tap them for mana, but they're not necessarily as evocative or thematic as maybe some people would like them to be. Umbris specifically does very horror things.
It's kind of that mind flayer aspect where you're exiling other people's libraries. You are going into their brains and their minds, and you are taking what's yours. You're like feeding the minds, essentially. So it's really thematic in that way.
So do you feel that you get affected when playing this deck by its sort of reputation?
Oh yeah. I'm ready for it to be countered when it comes out on the battlefield. I'm ready for I always, if I play this against anybody, I always warn them ahead of time. I'm like, this is what this deck does. Its goal is to exile your cards. If you don't like that, I will play something else. I kind of fully expect that, but I try to build it in a way that it can function without him out there at the same time, but it does heavily rely on him. So I also try to find ways to kind of keep him safer, ways I can give him Shroud or Hexproof, just so he's not thrown back into the command zone every time I put him out.
Generally, if you're going to build a sort of hated on commander, either through power level or something, you definitely need to build knowing it will be hated on.
Yes. I'm fully aware of that.
Yes.
So
the way that it tends to play, do you think that it's actually warranted, or people sort of, it just gets in their head a little bit?
Yes and no. I think if you get rid of him too early, it doesn't make as much sense, because he's much more better late game once you've exiled a lot of cards from people's libraries. If you haven't exiled much, he's not very big.
Yeah.
And unless I do have ways to make him unblockable, which is basically my win con, is commander damage, unblockable. You take 40 damage of commander damage and you're done. But he has to get to that point first.
Yeah, so it's like a slower build up.
Yeah, it is a deck that's much better against a group of people rather than a 1v1 deck, because you're not exiling as many cards, because it's your target opponent's graveyards. So if you're playing against 3 people, it's better because then you have more cards to pull from. I say yes and no. I think it is warranted. I know from personal experience you don't like seeing things that you were planning on playing go into exile.
Yeah.
So that's kind of rough. But I mean, there's so many things in Magic right now that people could consider hated.
Yeah.
That it's hard to avoid, at this point. So
people will kind of have the same mentality against other mill commanders. It's not just Umbris specifically. I always am just thinking like, well, I wasn't guaranteed those cards anyway. You could argue maybe it's a little, that general fear can be a little unwarranted. So what are some of the other key cards in the 99?
I have a few things to make it unblockable. I don't have any, since I do play more casually, I don't have any tutors to find things.
Okay.
Because I don't want to pull out my unblockable right away and I have to search for things.
Yeah.
I also have a lot of ways to exile cards from libraries beyond just Umbris, because like I said, I don't want to rely on Umbris for the exile. So I have cards like Leyline of the Void, Planar Void, Psychic Surgery, Tasha's Hideous Laughter.
That's a good one.
That's a big card in here.
Dothy Voidwalker, I think, is in there.
Dothy Voidwalker, Maddening Cacophony, which is basically mill, but you add that on with something like Leyline of the Void, where everything just automatically goes into exile. I do have one really mean combo in here.
Okay.
But again, I don't have ways to tutor, so I have to
happen
have these
upon
cards.
it, sort of.
I actually found this combo playing against someone else's deck. So I had Dothy Voidwalker out, which exiles cards. I had a player in my game who played Ill-Gotten Gains. So it's a hand discard. So with Dothy Voidwalker, you exile your hand.
Yeah.
You don't discard it. So everybody is top decking, and Ill-Gotten Gains, basically, if it wasn't exiled, you get to return cards from your graveyard back to your hand. But if you have no graveyard, you can't return anything to your hand.
Yeah.
So it basically eliminates everybody's hands.
Gives you sort of like a soft lock.
Yeah, yeah. So that's my kind of mean card, but I found that playing against someone else. I did not play that first, and then I saw it and I'm like, okay, this is mean, but I kind of like it, so I'm gonna throw it in there. That might end up coming out. There are a lot of good cards coming out for this deck in Baldur's Gate. There's a new horror pirate precon coming out.
Yes, yeah.
And the pirate is amazing for this deck because it is also horror tribal. So I have gotten asked whether to keep the horror pirate as the commander or to put it in the 99 of Umbris. I would put it in the 99 of Umbris just for the fact that Umbris deals so much commander damage.
Yeah, let you have a win con while you're already.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I don't think the cards in like the new cards in that precon have been spoiled yet, other than the commander. They
haven't. Elder Brain, I don't know if it'll end up in there or not, but that's another good card. It's a horror. That was announced. That was announced a while ago. I haven't seen what else is actually in there, but I'm assuming since the commander is a horror tribal commander that there will be more horrors in there.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming it will work very well with my deck.
Yeah, probably gonna get a couple upgrades at least.
Yeah. If anything, I just love it for flavor. I threw Ashiok's in there. Just it's so thematic. I love building thematic decks. That's my thing. I have so many tribal decks just because I think it's so much fun to build something that like your commander enhances.
Yeah.
So like I have cat tribal. I have grist insect tribal deck too.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
So that one's self-mill. That one isn't. That one isn't mill everyone else. Yeah, so I really like thematic decks, and obviously I like the horror theme because I also have a grist deck, which is very on brand with being kind of spooky.
It's one of the scariest looking commander arts. I feel like I get freaked out every time I look at it.
Yeah, I really wanted to get the well, I still want to get the showcase art version just because it's not as gross as the normal version. And Umbris itself is like kind of just such a creepy card, which also might be why I was just like, this is so cool. I want to build this because it just looks so creepy. And that's kind of like the theme of horrors and nightmares, is just creepy things.
Yep, and we're talking about it's a commander people are scared of to begin with, so you already got half the flavor right there.
Yeah. Which, I mean, if I don't play this deck, I'm totally fine with. I love it. I'll, you know, even if I never play it, I love the deck. I love the cards in it. I will never take it apart. So
that's what matters.
Yeah, exactly.
Where can everybody find you at?
So Giraffanat, Giraffanat. You can find me on Twitter. That's mainly my main form of communication. I also stream on Twitch. Starting May 30th, I'm going to be starting weekly EDH streams.
Oh, okay.
Some of them will have themes, some of them won't. The first theme is cats, so we're all playing cat decks.
Nice.
Which is really fun. But I'm basically just doing that over the summer. Normally, summer is my light work time, so I'm able to do more fun streams like that. Otherwise, you usually just see me on other people's streams or on Twitter. So.
All right. Make sure to check those streams out. Check her out on Twitter. And thank you guys for watching. There's going to be more episodes of this. Lots of other horror movie buffs coming on, talking about their favorite stuff, their favorite decks. We got more competitive people. We got people talking about old standard lists. We're kind of covering everything. If you would like to come on here, I'm on Twitter at LamorisCards. Or if you know a content creator who loves card games, loves horror, get them on here. I will talk to them forever about horror. It's going to be a great time for everybody. Thank you guys for watching.